Once upon a time, in Italy, a mother was accused of being poisoned by her own son. Well, who else would be to blame but the mother? She was the one who gave birth to him, raised him, and nurtured him. So who else could be at fault? In every tragedy there must be someone to blame, and the stepfather who, although not his biological father, played a role in raising the boy, died from the same poison. And as for the poisoner himself, of course he's guilty, but can he bear all the blame alone? After all, every problem stems from childhood, and a child cannot be entirely at fault. This video explores the true guilt of a mother who heard these chilling words from her adult son. "Why won't you just die? I gave you poison." Once upon a time in Italy. Monica Marchioni was a beautiful woman, with a strong character, an ability to present herself well, a good job, and many friends. Her life seemed perfect. At 33 years old, neither too young nor too old by Italian standards, she met a man who appeared to be the man of her dreams. After a year of a passionate romance, she became pregnant, carried the baby calmly, and gave birth to a healthy boy named Alessandro Leone. However, her relationship with the child's father began to fall apart. 4 months later, they gave up trying to make it work, and Monica moved to a new apartment with her son. Initially, the new mother was somewhat overwhelmed as her routine was turned upside down. But Alessandro was a wanted and loved child, so gradually everything fell into place. Monica and Leone continued their lives, which on the whole were quite prosperous. The child was a true blessing, rarely fussy, easygoing with everyone, adaptable to any situation, cheerful, charming, and affectionate. The father took an active role in raising his son. The grandparents adored him, and Monica couldn't imagine her life without the child. To restaurants, on walks, on vacations with friends, he was always with her. And why not take him? The boy charmed everyone, handsome, well-mannered, obedient. At their favorite restaurant, he was welcomed like a little prince. They even prepared his favorite dish, saffron risotto, especially for him, as if he were a special client. He was on friendly terms with his mother's friends, asking about their personal lives and offering valuable advice on their suitors. Monica had a wonderful relationship with her son, close and trusting. Though she never used these words, it was clear from the facts. Alessandro Leone was a typical mama's boy, very polite, very obedient, very attached to his mother, but also very timid, not independent, and generally what people would call weak. At school, he didn't particularly excel, but this didn't bother them much. Monica was proud of her son, and Leone took care of his mother. The boy was concerned about his mother being alone. He often suggested she find a partner, but she always refused. "What do I need a man for? I have you, and that's enough for me." But one day, Monica did meet the man of her dreams. As often happens, it was by chance. They were colleagues who rarely crossed paths at work, but after exchanging a few words one day, they became friends, and soon they both realized they wanted more. The man of Monica's dreams was also cheerful, handsome, and charming. Though slightly shorter than Monica, he got along wonderfully with Leone. As Monica fondly recounted, when the three of them went out together, it felt like she was taking two teenagers for a stroll. They were always up to some game or prank, laughing, joking, teasing each other and her, basically having as much fun as they could. So when Monica asked Leone if he minded if Lorenzo moved in with them, her son replied that he would be happy if his mother finally wasn't alone, especially if it meant having such a cool guy like Lorenzo around. At that moment, Monica was 49. Lorenzo, whom they called Lolo in the family, was a little older, and Leone was 14. So of course Monica was to blame for stealing her child's attention, especially at such a delicate age. The fact that there are no undelicate ages didn't matter. And it didn't matter either that if there hadn't been a man, Monica would have been too focused on her son, who would have grown up selfish as a result. So no matter how you look at it, the mother is always to blame. But in our story, a man entered Monica and Leone's home, and gradually, family life settled into place. From just a friend for games, Lorenzo became first an older friend to Leone, and then practically a father figure, someone who would scold and protect him. Leone even said he treated Lolo better than his biological father. Of course, conflicts arose. After all, a teenager is a teenager. It's all within the norm, as parents would say. But where were they looking? One wonders. If it was within the norm, would it have ended like this? Clearly, they either didn't pay enough attention or paid too much, considering they did seek help in solving teenage problems. Firstly, due to Leon's increasing anxiety, which had been noticeable before, Monica began to fear that his constant fear of getting sick might turn from a cute quirk into a serious problem. She took her son to doctors, who eventually diagnosed him with mild hypochondria. Hypochondria, according to DSM-5, is a clinical form of anxiety disorder characterized by unfounded and excessive worrying about one's own health or the health of others, with a belief that any symptom experienced by the subject is a sign of serious pathology. Secondly, with the onset of puberty, his aversion to school started to exceed the normal limits. Leone's reluctance to attend school was such that, without any reason, his temperature would rise or he would start vomiting on weekday mornings. Now, fears of academic difficulties have led him to fail the 9th grade and repeat it for the second time. It's worth noting that the boy had no problems in his relationships with classmates. He had friends, even a girlfriend, and he was far from stupid, quite the opposite. He was just constantly stressed because of his fears, afraid of getting sick, afraid of not coping with schoolwork, which made him nervous, even more scared, and the cycle repeated. To prevent Leone from falling behind his classmates, Monica enrolled him in a private school where 1 year of study was spread over 2. She found a psychologist, hired tutors with psychological backgrounds, whose main task was not so much to explain what was not understood in school, but to help the student overcome his fears and anxieties. And voila, victory! Leone completed the course with decent grades. While the majority barely passed with a score of 60 out of 100, Leone managed to score 86. In short, his mother pushed him. Or maybe she didn't push him enough earlier. Or maybe later. But something wasn't right, because otherwise the desire to pursue education wouldn't have awakened. And it didn't, because Leone had to repeat for the second time. Maybe I shouldn't have pushed him, Monica later justified herself, but I wanted to protect him. It's interesting. How would she justify not protecting him if she had left him in the same school to deal with his problems like many others did? In any case, there's no doubt, no matter what she did, she would still be to blame, because a mother is always to blame for everything her children do. And Leone, despite the admiration of neighbors and friends, fell short of the ideal in some aspects. After finishing school, he decided to take a year or 2 off to think about where to go next, or if he should even go anywhere at all. For this, his mother also received her share of criticism. Numerous critics of others' decisions easily gave an unsatisfactory rating, leaving unanswered the question of how it is physically possible to make an adult young man do something, especially when the law obliges you to support him after the age of 18 until he finds his way in life. And Leone wasn't exactly eager to find that way. Monica tried to help by arranging various odd jobs for him, but they were always somehow not quite right. Either they were unpaid, or they were paid but required work in return, and they didn't pay millions. And Leone wanted millions. For his 18th birthday, he asked for a Rolex, or a Cartier. At worst, a Patek Philippe. The parents, for whom the necessary amount was quite serious considering his young age and modest achievements, thought it was appropriate to buy a watch for only 1,200 euros from Mercier. How could they? Did Monica have any way to please the armchair experts in pedagogy? Because it's clear that you can't always say yes to a child, buying him whatever he wants, and it's also clear that giving a gift of your choice instead of the child's choice isn't quite right either. Oh, and another thing. They always took him on trips with them, flew business class to expensive hotels. As if they couldn't have seated him separately on the plane and housed him somewhere more modest, maybe even left him at home. Or couldn't they? In general, Monica is still being blamed for not instilling an understanding of the value of money in Leone, and of course, for the fact that her son measures everything by money too. The first doubt, whether Leone is really who he seems, arose in Monica right after giving him those ill-fated watches, when he politely thanked her for the gift and immediately asked for permission to exchange it for a diamond bracelet because he never liked watches. And he explained to his bewildered mother that he had asked for a Rolex, an item that was supposed to emphasize his status. At the end of the evening, Monica cried not because she failed to please him with the gift, but because when she asked if he realized how much he upset everyone, the young man replied in a frosty tone that he hadn't said anything wrong, and that on the contrary, they should be proud that their son speaks honestly and doesn't lie. From that day on, his mother began to notice more and more frequently the cold, detached gaze from Leone directed at her and her husband, a gaze that of an observant but indifferent onlooker. With this gaze, he conveyed that he had hit an animal with the car, and he didn't care if it was alive or not. That he wasn't at all like his mother thought, not as sensitive as her and not kind at all. That he wanted a lot of money and a lot of power, quickly and effortlessly, and therefore decided to sell his soul to the devil. Completely calmly, so you couldn't tell if he was joking or serious, he announced that he had decided to commit suicide because everything in this life was too complicated, and the only thing that could make him want to live was if someone knocked on the door and told him that Leon had inherited something. And then he explained to his frightened mother that he was telling her this for her own peace of mind, so she could gradually get used to the idea. These statements made Monica tremble, while her stepfather just laughed, saying, "Can't you see he's deliberately provoking you and trying to upset you?" Monica is also reproached for not noticing the warning signs. She categorically rejects these accusations. She noticed, she screamed, she begged for help, and she wasn't heard. Everyone, from specialists to her own husband, reacted roughly the same way. Don't exaggerate, it's just a typical teenage tantrum. Later, however, they started saying that they should have gone to the police, but again, go to the police. With what? After all, it was all just words. There were never any concrete actions behind them. Nonetheless, the mother began to fear her son, locking herself in the bedroom at night, understanding that these fears were based on nothing but vague suspicions, and feeling ashamed of herself. Her husband laughed at this, but still didn't insist on leaving the door open. And strange things began to happen in the house. The TV switched channels by itself. The computer displayed images and messages. One of the boy's friends later said, as if it were a joke, "You know what I'm doing now? I'm driving my parents crazy. Just for fun. And you know what? It works." Yes, it worked. Monica reached the point where she was afraid to stay alone at home with her son. And during yet another argument with Leon, which arose as always lately because he demanded something loudly and arrogantly and wasn't given it, the mother said, "Enough." She rented him an apartment for a few days, confident that in a couple of days he would regret it, realize it, and come running back home. It almost happened like that, but not in 2 days, but in a month. And when Leone hugged his mother during reconciliation, she felt no sincerity, only the same scrutinizing gaze of the cold observer. But what did she expect? They said later, she was constantly pressing him, and in the end, she kicked him out of the house. She should have done it long ago, not give him money for an apartment, and, as Monica says, from July, when Leone celebrated his 18th birthday, until December of this difficult year, the changes in his behavior were barely noticeable. Just minor details that no one noticed except her intuition. With the beginning of the next year, everything went downhill at avalanche speed. Leon became unrecognizable. In a matter of weeks, he transformed from a polite, quiet boy into a rude jerk. His uncertainty, nervous tics, and hypochondria all vanished without a trace. Specialists were baffled. How could such drastic changes occur in such a short period of time? Monica was puzzled too. She never directly spoke about it, but she hinted that she couldn't find any reasons for these changes other than supernatural ones. Another friend of Leon's said they really wanted to make a deal with the devil, but he backed out. And he's sure Leon did too. But Monica doubts it, and she can't help but call Leone's gaze during that period devilish. However, all this was later. At that moment, the parents were desperately trying to solve the problem, adding economic incentives to psychologists and psychiatrists. Leon was informed that he would be given an apartment for a year. He would live there alone, and during that year he must either find a job and start supporting himself, or go back to studying. The idea didn't thrill the boy, but he had no choice, and on April 15th he met his future as an independent and fully fledged member of society, and the owners of the apartment in the center of Bologna, which his mother found for him. But as they say, if you want to make God laugh, that same evening Leon suggested cooking dinner for everyone. Pasta according to his signature recipe, with a dressing of salmon, cream, and walnuts. His mother objected. She could make it faster. Nobody in the house liked cream, and to be honest, she was afraid. But the boy insisted, and Monica agreed. Leon locked himself in the kitchen, worked on something for a long time, and finally served 3 plates. The dish seemed wildly oversalted to Monica, with a hint of ammonia, so she struggled to force down a few bites of pasta and suggested quickly making pasta with tomato sauce instead. Someone was making an effort for others for once, and here she was. In short, classic devaluation and another parenting mistake. Leon reacted vehemently, literally having a fit. "I'm a failure. I can't even cook a plate of pasta. Why was I even born? Why did my mother give birth to me?" To try to calm the boy down, Lollo, generously seasoning the pasta with pepper, stuffed the entire portion into himself and then, after a few minutes, said he was feeling dizzy. But Monica wasn't focused on that. Her distraught son rushed to his room and called for his mother, feeling an acute need for her presence right now. She ran to comfort him, her son, something that hadn't happened in quite a while, and hugged him tightly, especially when she tried to go to the living room to check on her husband. Sobbing, Leon literally clung to his mother, not letting go even when she, feeling a severe bout of nausea, ran to the bathroom. He followed her, brought a glass of water, and very persistently tried to make her drink it. Later, an examination would show that the concentration of poison in this water was such that one glass would have been enough for 30 people. Fortunately for herself, Monica simply couldn't bring herself to take a sip. Nevertheless, she repeatedly tried to gather her strength, stand up, and go check on her husband. But every time she almost succeeded, Leon grabbed her hand again and stopped her with a cry of, "Mom, don't leave." While she still couldn't calm down completely, she suddenly spoke to her mother in her usual icy tone, suggesting that maybe she should consider, what if he had just taken poison and was dying now? When Monica finally broke through to her husband, she found him on the couch, lifeless and foaming at the mouth. She rushed for the phone to call an ambulance, but found that the phones were missing, and only at that moment did she finally begin to understand what was happening. She ran to the door, and heard a strange sound behind her. It turned out her son was putting on latex gloves to grab her by the throat with one hand and cover her nose with the other. Monica fought desperately. She clung to the furniture, struggled, scratched, screamed to the neighbors to call the police. Her son dragged her deeper into the apartment, gagged her, hit her, strangled her with his hands, threw her on the bed and on the floor. Then he tried to suffocate her with pillows, 2 of them because she was turning her head. At that moment, he was sitting on her back, not letting her get up. And you know what Monica replied when he said, in the same icy tone, "Why won't you just die? I gave you poison, sooner or later it must work." She said, "You're joking, right?" Even after everything that happened, the woman still didn't believe that this nightmare was actually happening. She tried to reason with him. "Darling, please, it's me, your mother. Let's talk. We can still fix this." But all she heard in return was, "Why won't you die already?" That's when Monica decides that there's no escaping for her anymore, and wanting only to end the agony as soon as possible, she begs to stop torturing her and let her die peacefully. At that moment, something happened that she describes as a miracle, and is ready to swear on anything that it wasn't just her survival instinct waking up, but something from outside. And that something lifted her from under the abdomen, hoisted her over the shoulder like a sack of potatoes, and pulled the weakened, barely alive woman out from under the 75-kilogram adrenaline-charged monster. Even this force probably couldn't have saved her. Leon chased after his mother again, and caught up to her, but the police were already breaking into the house. Hearing shouts on the stairs, the last thing Leon said to his mother, "What have you done?" "You screamed until the carabinieri came." When the door to the apartment was finally opened, Monica, crazed with horror, ran out into the stairwell and collapsed, and Leon calmly went past the policeman to another exit, and only then dashed away in his socks. Through small roads, bushes, vegetable gardens, he broke through to his grandmother on his mother's side an hour later. Scratched, covered in blood, he immediately disappeared into another room. From his muttering, the bewildered woman understood only that he attacked his mother and seems to have killed his stepfather. An hour later, his father arrived. They whispered behind closed doors for a long time, and late in the evening of the same day, the police came for Leon. Following the hot trail, the aspiring killer didn't realize that a phone can be tracked even if it's in airplane mode. Monica was taken away in an ambulance. Weeks of intensive care, painful antidote therapy, and humiliating procedures awaited her. The sodium nitrite that her son added to the pasta caused the transformation of normal blood hemoglobin into methemoglobin, which is incapable of carrying oxygen. In normal circumstances, its concentration in the blood should not exceed 2%. At 10%, oxygen starvation occurs, and at 70% death occurs. Monica's methemoglobin level was over 72%, and even doctors are amazed that she survived. And this won't be the end of what she'll have to go through. Since Leon's arrest, he has changed his story 4 times. The first one, "I didn't see anything, I don't know anything." He quickly abandoned it, because a scratched face and blood-stained clothes don't match with someone who missed everything while sitting in his room. The second one was much more thought out. It wasn't him but Monica, who, for unknown reasons, wanted to poison her husband and son, and then poison herself. This version lasted longer than all the others. It seems that this was how Leon was planning to explain the deaths of his stepfather and mother in advance. The poison with which Monica was poisoned, he bought a week before the attempt from her tablet and paid for it with his card, while touching other gadgets only in gloves and wearing a medical mask. From Monica's phone, Leon sent messages to her friends that were supposed to make them think that she was planning to get rid of her husband. Because of these accusations, Monica will be under suspicion, and an investigation against her will last for a year. Psychologists and psychiatrists will talk to her not only to help, but also to catch her lying if she suddenly lies. Leon's biological father will take his side, saying that he believes him and not her, who is actually the murderer. But the version doesn't withstand very simple questions. Why, if the mother bought the poisons, did Leon need to look up on the internet how they affect humans? Why did she call the police and he ran away from her? And finally, how come the alleged killer herself barely survived, and her victim, the poisoned pasta, didn't even taste it? Then another version came up. Yes, Leon laced the food with poison. But not to kill. He planned to kill himself, just to see how the poison works so that later when he uses it on himself, he wouldn't suffer too much. In general, even as the third version, which was already not very logical, it didn't arouse any trust and was only good for journalists for another batch of sensational news. And in the end, when it became clear that for the murder of one person and the attempted murder of another he risked getting a life sentence, Alessandro Leonazzoli pleaded guilty. In a statement prepared in advance and read by him from a piece of paper, it said that today he wants to finally tell the truth, and the truth is that he poisoned his stepfather and mother. He explained out of fear that he didn't confess earlier, apologized to those he harmed, and expressed hope that his mother could forgive him. Monica didn't believe him, noting that he never asked for forgiveness from her personally, and that Leon only confessed to avoid a life sentence, and at the same time, he showed no remorse for what he had done. From the beginning of the trial, she insisted on one thing. Her son wanted easy and quick money, and decided to kill his parents for the inheritance. The High Court didn't take her side. The verdict stated that the reason why the son tried to kill his mother was a sharp dislike for her, arising from the fact that she constantly pressured him to study or work. Monica disagreed with such motivation, but she didn't appeal the verdict. She had enough hell in her life without it. In addition to the suffering caused by poisoning and shock, the physical loss of her husband and her actual son, the heavy shock and depression, the feeling of loneliness and emptiness were added accusations from armchair experts. Monica caught it all, both what was and what wasn't. After a year of silence, she began to give interviews, and then the hate just rolled in like an avalanche. She doesn't cry enough, she looks too good, and many on this basis considered it possible to draw conclusions. She's a bad mother, and that's even in the best case. Monica, on the other hand, decided that since her life was spared, then she must be needed for something, not just for herself, and began to fight against the victim blaming of parents who suffered at the hands of their children. There are many such cases in Italy. Recently there has been a whole epidemic. In 1989, Ferdinando Carretta shot his parents, Marta Chesi and Giuseppe Carretta, as well as his brother Nicola, for money. Maria Rosa Tessari and her husband, Antonio Maso, were killed in 1991 by their son, Pietro Maso. Later the teenager planned to also kill his sisters and some accomplices. In 1994, Nadia Frigerio killed her mother, Eleonora Pierfranceschi, so she wouldn't interfere with her affair with her lover. In 1995, Carlo Nicolini killed and dismembered his parents. In 2001, Erika DiNardo, together with her boyfriend, killed her mother, Susanna Cassini, and 11-year-old brother Gianluca, planning to then also kill her father. In 2017, fearing punishment for poor grades, a 16-year-old son axed Salvatore Vincelli and Nunzia Di Gianni. 2021, Marco Eletti, for unknown reasons, beat his father to death with a hammer and attempted to kill his mother, Sabrina Guidetti. 2021, Benno Neumayer strangled his parents, Peter Neumayer and Laura Perselli. Again in 2021, Paola and Silvia Zani, after drugging their mother with sleeping pills, strangled Laura Ziliani. 2022, Diego Gugoli killed his father Sergio and mother Lorena over 16,000 euros. 2022, during an argument, Daniel Gandolfo killed his mother, Maria Begonia. 2023, Michele Fresi beat his father Giovanni to death with a stick. 2024, Mauro Pedrotti strangled his mother, Santina Delay. Giovanni Rocci, Doretta Graneris, Patricia Finucchi, Emanuela Del Monte, Mascia Torelli, Stefano Diamante, Paolo Passimeni, Valerio Ulasci. The list goes on, and it's staggering, and every time, hate can only be avoided by those who have died, and the behavior of the survivors is scrutinized under a microscope, and they inevitably find what was done wrong. Experts say that the nature of victim blaming lies in the fact that people who blame the victim really want to believe that the world is fair, that everyone gets what they deserve, and therefore, if they behave properly, then nothing like this will ever happen to them. Because otherwise they would have to admit that evil can fall on someone's head like a random brick, without any guilt or mistake, that it cannot be controlled and cannot be insured against. It's scary, and knowing this you can understand victim blamers, but still, before judging Monica, remember, after what happened, she repented. She repented precisely in the fact that she used to think that she was somehow different from those with whom such things happen, and that nothing like that could ever happen to her. Alessandro Leonazzoli was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and it is absolutely obvious that no court will free Monica Marchioni from the lifelong feeling of guilt and bitterness of loss. Once upon a time, in Italy,